In today's video, we're gonna talk about my worst nightmares when staying in Airbnbs and what you can learn about them so that you don't make the same mistakes and cause your rental business to go down and lose not only customers, but also a lot of money. Hello everyone and welcome back to Novarise, your channel for financial education. So today it's gonna be a video with a lot of lessons learned. At some degree, it might sound like I am venting, which I sort of am, but the reason why I decided to create this episode is because I really wanted to share you horrible things that have happened to not only me, but also the Novarise team when we were staying in different Airbnbs throughout the country, and what you can take from that and make sure that you don't make the same mistakes. Otherwise, you're gonna throw your reputation down the drain. So let's just start with our very first place. We're not gonna throw any names because we're not about killing anyone's business, but we are going to tell you the state or the area where we actually stay in. Before we start, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can continue receiving notifications for episodes like this. And the very first one is with a property in New Orleans. All right, so here we are in the tablet and we're gonna start with New Orleans, right? So what were some of the issues with the Airbnb that we found in New Orleans? So number one is that they didn't announce any issues. So no issues announced. Right? So there's two ways to go about this, right? So you can announce potential issues in your booking, right? Call it Airbnb or through booking.com or whatever platform you're using, just so that your guests could plan accordingly. Maybe they are aware that, oh, this area is typically very expensive, and the reason why you're lowering the price is because there's construction or something, some level of issues going on, so that at least they are aware of what's happening. And that's exactly what happened to us. So we booked this Airbnb and we wanted to be close by to a conference that we were attending. And at the same time, that trip to New Orleans was meant to be a company retreat for the entire Novarise team. So we will all go to the conference all together. And then afterwards, we were supposed to spend a couple of days in New Orleans, checking out Bourbon Street and like the nice jazz and the delicious food. So that way we can take a small, tiny break from all the action that we've been creating for you guys and just, head back to our homes brand new and create even better content. But that process was actually disruptive when we arrived at this Airbnb and nothing was announced to us. And so what happened was that night we checked in relatively late. We got into New Orleans late and we didn't go to bed till at least, I will say somewhere between 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So we fell asleep and like literally at 7 a.m. there was massive drilling, okay? And we woke up thinking that there were gunshots in the vicinity because the building where we were staying was actually made out of concrete. And imagine I'm sleeping right here and this is the wall. They were literally drilling right on the same wall on the other side of the business. So the entire building was actually trembling. It is nice to have a concrete building because it's more resistant to a lot of things. But at the same time, when noise takes place and the structure of the building, it's massive. It's ridiculous. So there were no signs of any construction going on. So we didn't see it in the Airbnb. And let's assume that the host missed it. Oopsie, right? They were too busy and they forgot. At least when you're walking through the building, there should at least be some signs indicating pardon our appearance or construction is happening next door. So when we walked in, we noticed that there was something odd in the entrance, that there were some construction items, but we thought that perhaps they were just working on the lobby. We didn't expect that, work was going to be happening throughout the entire building. So what difference does it make, you might be wondering, in the event that, hey, if they didn't announce it in Airbnb, like why would you still want them to announce it when you arrive to the building? Because that helps us with planning, right? Maybe instead of taking a couple of extra hours and going to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, I would have gone to bed right away and not answer emails. I would have at least gotten an extra hour of sleep, but I didn't. None of us knew about any of that stuff. Some of us stayed up late answering some emails because we were trying to play catch up. And so overall, we had less than 4 hours of sleep. And I know it might not sound like a big deal to some people, especially if you're out on vacation and traveling, but we were getting ready to go to a conference. That night was the only night we were supposed to get a full-blown sleep before we jump into the conference. And the conference lasted an average about 12 hours daily, full of learning, full of content, full of networking. So we really needed to be well rested for that. And obviously that didn't happen. So back to the tablet, no issues were announced and the drilling started exactly at 7 a.m. Now, I don't know about you guys, but generally where I'm from, but I live in New York, construction doesn't start until 9 a.m. They usually let you know beforehand, but again, they missed it. But to make matters worse, in this case, they started drilling the walls at 7 o'clock in the morning. Imagine if I would have, gotten woken up at 9 a.m. There was no argument whatsoever because typically business hours starts at 9 a.m. But they started at 7 a.m. I've never seen that before anywhere. So imagine dealing with this at 7 a.m. So the irony of this entire thing is that when we booked the place, they made a big deal. So they miss announcing construction, but they make sure that in their announcements of the Airbnb that noise should have been kept down and that the guests were not allowed to make anything higher than 50 decibels. I know, 50 decibels. Even I had to Google it. Even I didn't know what that meant. I mean, I kind of got an idea what a decibel was, but what exactly is 50 decibels? So to make your learning even more entertaining, I took the liberty to pull out what that means. So first, let's just go over the concept of decibel. What the heck is that? So decibel is a unit used to measure the intensity of a sound, okay? So they're talking about in the post that we were not allowed to make anything higher than 50 decibels. So I pulled this chart right here, and 50 decibels, it's at a conversational level. An alarm clock is already at a 60 decibel level. So that means that I would have been in violation if I had my alarm clock up in the morning because, hey, I went over, the 50 decibel mark. But meanwhile, they are such hypocrites. They don't let you know that there's construction going on. There's massive drilling. And that drilling was, once again, I mentioned that I woke up thinking that I was being shot, that gunshots were taking place inside the building. And if you look at this scale right here, a gunshot is at a 130 decibels, okay? What is the irony of things? They make you pay thousands of dollars for that stay because that's what we ended up paying for our team. And on top of that, we cannot even have a decent conversation because we will be in violation, but they're okay. They're okay to make noise, right? You have to pay and then they make noise. The irony of life. Now that you might be wondering, well, what's the big deal about 50 decibels? You always have to give it the benefit of the doubt. Like I thought, hey, maybe that's their way to keep the building in check, to prevent crazy partying from going on. We as a team, we were in a company retreat, so we didn't really find the need to make a lot of noise inside the Airbnb because we were within walking distance of Bourbon Street. Now, if you haven't been to New Orleans or to Bourbon Street, partying over there, it's crazy, as you can see on the screen. There's plenty of noise in there whatsoever, so there was no need for us to bring the noise back into the Airbnb, okay? So we were woken up at 130 decibel, massive drilling. I'm already going insane thinking, what the hell happened? Are we gonna get killed? What's gonna happen? And then we realized that it was just, drilling. So I figured, let me try to figure out what's going on. And then we ended up calling the host. And guess what the irony of things is? So we called the host at 7 a.m. and the host was not even on site. And what they were telling us is that, sorry, we cannot do anything about it because our maintenance guy doesn't start at 9 a.m. Once again, what the heck is going on? So you're telling me that as a host, you're choosing not to do anything about the drilling and that we as guests have to wait 2 hours for the maintenance guy to show up. So problem number 2, don't do this. Make sure you have somebody on site to resolve any issues. Because guess what? The person over the phone is true. That person might not have been able to help us out. For all I know, that person might have been working from overseas because people are trying to reduce expenses and they probably hire a virtual assistant all the way from across the globe. That person cannot travel all the way over here and make things happen. This is why I always talked about having a property manager on site. I own properties in Alabama and in Florida. I don't have the time nor the energy, and I'm not Flash. I cannot just show up in front of a building if an issue happened. That's why I make sure I have property managers, I have boots on ground to make sure that whatever my tenant needs, that is taken care of. So in this case, the company, was telling us to wait 2 hours, meaning you, good luck, deal with the massive drilling for the next 2 hours until we decide to do something about it because, hey, our maintenance guy is not on the floor. So what choices do we have? Either to try to fall back on to sleep or try to find some breakfast. But guess what? New Orleans is a party city. Not everybody wakes up or opens up at 7 o'clock. So even if we wanted to go out and grab breakfast, we didn't really have much of an option. We still had to wait for the restaurants to open up. So imagine us being in there on a Monday, which we find out the hard way that usually most establishments are not open on a Monday because everybody's trying to get some rest from the massive partying from the night before on Sunday, right? So nobody whatsoever is willing to help us out. And we were thinking, okay, let's not take it out on the girl on the phone. Let's just try to make some common sense about this and just wait. So we figured out stuff to wait. We try to get some work ahead and we were waiting, but the massive drilling never stopped. And so an hour later, we ended up calling again. Hey, what's happening? Oh, we already submitted a ticket. We don't know what's going on. So customer service felt like it was more of a checklist, right? So people weren't necessarily thinking, how can I make my guest stay more enjoyable? Because this is not any business. An Airbnb, when you're providing short-term rentals, you are in the hospitality business. Hospitality means making your guests feel welcome. And they did nothing but to make us feel the complete opposite. Not only they were ripping us off thousands of dollars, they just simply say, hey, you know what? Here's a checklist. I already submitted a ticket. Good luck. Deal with it. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to make the effort to make sure that your guest is comfortable, whether by providing a different room or just moving them around so they can go someplace else. But you shouldn't have just make your guests sit there and wait because once again, it's not like we have anything more important to do, right? Like we were there on vacation. And even if we had nothing important to do, when you're traveling, you're not expected to just get locked up in the room and wait for things to happen. When you're traveling, you want to go sightseeing. When you're traveling on business, you want to get business done, right? You want to get that presentation out. And we couldn't do any of that because of the massive drilling. So the whole process of customer service was horrible. Number 4, poor follow-up system, right? So also, if you are promising your guests that you're going to follow up into something, make sure you do that as well, okay? So if you're saying, oh, we're gonna make sure they're gonna look into it, please hang on tight, which is what they tell us, you know, within an hour or so, if you still don't have any updates, at least have the decency to follow up with a phone call, with an email and tell your customers, hey, we know that you're in a comfortable situation, but we're doing our very best. We're still looking into it. At least tell us something. We had no clue what was happening the entire time. And on top of that, eventually we got somebody come in at 9:30ish in the morning, and that wasn't even the maintenance guy. So security was also another issue. Some guy just walked into our unit claiming to be security, and then he just simply walked in just because he was told to check on something, but he didn't really know that he was supposed to check on the noise. He just walked in and said, I was supposed to check on something. And then when we asked him, what are you here for? He didn't know. So there was no security clearance whatsoever. Somebody can just walk into your room without even asking whether you were around in the area or not. And then on top of that, when we asked him about the noise, he was like, oh, this is the first time I'm seeing this. I didn't know there was noise. Come on. Construction doesn't happen overnight. There must have been some signs. We missed it because we arrived so late. We did see a big, massive industrial dump there, but we didn't think it had to do with that because logic says, well, if this Airbnb is open to guests, they wouldn't be creating crazy noise and waking up. At least wait until noon, right? Like don't do it at 7 o'clock in the morning. So security was an issue. And then what we decided to do was like, what, something is so off about this place. Not only the noise, but now we're getting poor customer service. We don't know what's going on. And then people are just walking into your unit just randomly. So what we did, we went and we did a Google search. And then we realized that security was actually an issue in those units. So again, as a business owner, you should make sure that that doesn't happen in your unit because the last thing you want is for your guests to be in the middle of something, and then have people walk into them. And then so when we went into Google, we saw a review of a single mom who was traveling to New Orleans with her teenage daughter, and they were sleeping, and somebody walked in somewhere around 1 o'clock in the morning, a guy. So imagine if you're a single mom and you're sleeping and then some random dude walks into your room, like your world falls apart. As a woman, you cannot protect your daughter. And then as a mother, you're probably thinking about the worst. Hey, there's this random guy walking in. How can I protect my daughter? And then as females, we tend to think the worst. Some random guy walks into a room. What are they going to do to us? They're going to, outforce us or something like that. So at least that's what I think about. The fear component is there, and you're paying a lot of money so you can feel safe, right? Because it's not like we're just renting some random hostel in a bad neighborhood. Like this was supposed to be a good rental where we can all feel safe and sound and have a nice, good night's sleep. And we did not get that. So for those who are actually looking for ideas as to how to implement that security component, the way the locks were set up in that building was that they were all through keypad, which is fine. That's the modernized way to do it. That's the smart way to do it. But you need to go one step above, right? So a couple of weeks ago, I released an episode where we interview another real estate investor. You can see the screenshot right on the screen, but don't jump out of the video. You can just check it out next time. But in that video, Pascal talks about how every reservation gets a brand new code. So as soon as the checkout happens, that code that your older guest originally had expires, and then you can set up a new random code for this new guest to come in. So that way they can actually have a very, very unique code, and that if the old guest forgot something, they cannot just randomly punch in the code and just walk into the unit and flip everybody out. So that's one solution that you can do. Definitely one thing that check out, which obviously they failed to do that in here. And that's why we're sharing that with you so that you don't make the same mistakes. So now as a guest, right? Because you're probably thinking, hey, all of these tips are great for Airbnb or short rental owners, but how we as guests can protect ourselves? And it's very simple. Don't solely check on the reviews that appear on Airbnb. Make sure you go above and beyond and you check on Google, because what happens with Airbnb is that they're a little shady. And here's how they do it. So let's say, for example, you're looking for a rental. So I have the Airbnb screen right here. Let's say I want to go to Pensacola and I pick a day here until here, one day, and I want to search something. And you have this unit right here. I'm just going to randomly pick on one. I'm not picking on this host, but let's just say I want to go down and check on the reviews, right? So when you make it to the review side, you will literally have to go through every single review. So we're talking about 179 reviews. Who really has the time to go through all of this? So the system doesn't allow you to sort through the ones that are bad. And it's not like you can actually pick, oh, which one had the worst scoring. You can't see that. You literally have to read review by review to really understand, okay, what really went wrong? And we're all busy people. We don't have the time to do that. But let's say you're going to a place like booking.com. And so let's just find a place around our current location. Based on the background, you can see we're not in New York City. So let's say I want to check out a place in Atlanta. And okay, yada, yada, I'm checking in and out around this time, looking for the best deal. Let's say I want to open up. Now you get an understanding of, okay, so we're talking about a review of 7.4 out of 10, 7.8, 8.7. I want to stay on the 8.7. So let's just click this open and try to check out, okay, what are the goods and what are the bads? And let's just see what people have to say. So I want to come in and sort by high review. Or let's say I want to come in and I want to sort by the worst reviews. So let's say the zone looks nice, 8.7, but I want to see the bad because I want to know what's going on too. So I'm coming here to read all reviews and I want to sort it by the lowest score. And that will give me a sense, okay, are these reviews coming from people who are just simply whining because, I don't know, they prefer a certain brand of shampoo and they didn't get it? I mean, that's like whatever. But if I read something somewhere in here of a guest saying, hey, I was sleeping in my room and then some random dude walked into my room when I was sleeping with my daughter and I'm a single mother, you know what? You might want to take that into consideration. I wouldn't necessarily want to go in there. So as a guest, that's how you protect yourself. And of course, going by Google reviews. So you can literally just come in here and do a copy paste on this item and then just go to Google.com and then you are gonna place this in there and then you're gonna try to find what's in here and then you will literally come into the reviews in the screen and you can check them all out. And one thing about Google reviews is that they cannot be removed. So you can still sort it by most helpful, most recent, and lowest score. And that's how you will know what's wrong with the location. So that's how you as a guest can protect yourself. Sadly, we failed to do that because we were running out last minute. So try not to plan things at the very last minute. We didn't have the time until it was too late. And we were out almost $2,000 trying to argue with, that Airbnb. Now, so we already have a whole full list of what happened in New Orleans. Issues unannounced, no management on site, customer service who didn't care. They just wanted to complete a checklist, poor follow-up system, a bad security. And now let's just move on to what would happen. How do you offer some type of replacement? And so this is what happened. The host refused to refund us the money. They wanted us to deal with it for the rest of the trip. There's no way we were gonna wake up to massive drilling for an entire week. And so what we did is, okay, we asked them, I understand if you don't wanna refund me the money, but at least can you place us in another unit where we don't have to deal with this noise? And that didn't happen. We had to wait. And 6 hours later, we still have to follow up with them asking what was going on. And the most they were able to say was, well, we can offer you some replacement in this area, but it won't be right away. It won't be right away because we have some guests and we need to clean the room and yada, yada. And we were like, okay, that's fine. Let's just see if we can at least get ahead or get started with the conference and then come back and move our stuff around. Not that we had nothing else to do, but we figured, hey, if this is what we have to work with, whatever, as long as we're not losing the money and then we don't have a place to stay. It wasn't just Anthony and I, but it was the entire team. So they offer us some random place and then Anthony went online and he Googled the pricing. It was actually a downgrade. And again, we don't need anything to be luxurious. We just want a place that is clean enough in a safe neighborhood and that we were able to just walk back and forth between the conference and Bourbon Street. So it was a downgrade and we wanted the difference for the downgrade. Why will we pay for something that is not worth that money? So you as a host, please take that into consideration. Don't do that to your guests because it is horrible. They will not only be mad at you, they will make sure you will get a horrible review and you will never get a recommendation. Remember, recommendations are the best way to attract business. If your guest is happy, you will get other families coming to your short-term rental, and that will allow you to get a nice flow of income coming in. So not only we were downgraded, they refused to give us the money back. So talking about that. And then after 6 hours, I've had it. I said, enough is enough. I am not dealing with this. I want a refund. And they also make the refund really, really difficult. Now, I understand refund is not your thing, but come on, if you cannot truly deliver, you shouldn't be holding the money hostage, okay? Because this is hard-earned money from your customers. We paid close to $2,000. I think it was more than $2,000. I don't remember, but it was somewhere around that ballpark. That's a lot of money for anyone to just throw out there and just laying around. I could have used that money to hire another team member. I could have used that money to reinvest it into the company, to create more videos, you name it, right? But why would I want to leave it in an Airbnb so that way the next day at 7 a.m. I'll have massive drilling at 100 and something decibels, creating stress in the back of my mind. So we ended up reaching out to Airbnb, which was horrible because they didn't want to have anything to do with it. So then that made us default back into dealing with the host. And then what did the host said? Well, they said, sit tight. We're going to call you whenever we're ready. So at that point, it's been 6 hours. We had lost 4 hours of our conference and we still had another 4 hours to go, hoping that, hey, let's not miss the remaining 4 hours. But these people did not want to give us the money back. So I don't know how in the heck, there was a lot of argument, certainly a lot of yelling over the phone, because at that point, the drilling wasn't stopping. So if you're locked up in a room with drilling happening for 6 hours straight, anybody could go crazy. And so at that point, I had to resort to the most horrible things. And that was, to my biggest fear as a landlord, I'm going to destroy your property. And I even feel embarrassed for saying this, but as a landlord, as an owner, I do not want my tenant destroying my property. Believe me, the minute that comes up, I'm like, you know what? Here's cash or keys, get out. I don't want your energy. I don't want your negative vibes destroying the flow of my business. So get out. These people did not care. They wanted to force you being there. And finally, after a lot of arguments and back and forth, they finally decided to give us the money back. So we have wasted 6 hours of our time. We lost hours of our sleep. We also lost a lot of content that we could have been learning in the conference. So we missed that as well. And then we were scrambling with our suitcases in the middle of the street as if we were backpacking. I don't mind doing that. I've had my experience traveling around the world as a backpacker. That's great. But we were here for business. And not only Anthony and I had to do that, our entire team had to do that. We have to drag our luggages down the hall, trying to get from one place to another. And this is just totally unacceptable. I know that some people might have it worse, but we make sure that we booked a nice place so that our team had a nice time, and we were unable to provide that to our team. So make sure that as a host, you don't do that. And this is just one unit. And again, I know this episode is becoming a little long, but I think it's necessary information for you to take into account. So that was in New Orleans. Let's just move on and talk about the second place that we went to recently in Nashville. Also a horrible experience. But before we continue, I'm going to shamelessly ask you that if you're finding value in this video, please hit the like button down below so you can help this episode rank and help protect other Airbnb owners and also other guests who might be dealing with a situation like this. So 1 week later, the company retreat is over. Our team members went back to their daily life, but we still had to continue with our business. We had other business meetings to attend, and one of them happened to be in Nashville. So we rented another unit that had a similar dynamic where they eliminated the front desk, everything was automated, and it was a complete nightmare. So the very first thing that they did was that their communication was a mess. So let's just start with that. So when we rented the Airbnb, they used 3 different forms of communication. They communicated with us via text message, via email, and via the platform, which in this case was booking.com. So booking.com was great, just the host was horrible. So they send us extensive emails, testaments of emails all along, and they were all broken down in different platforms. So imagine you have to go to booking.com to read one part of the message, then you have to go to an email to read another part of the message, and then you have to go through your text message to read another part of them. That's just plain inconvenient. When you're busy and you're trying to get stuff done, you're approving videos, you're recording videos on the go like I am right now, like we both are, this is horrible. Like it's a horrible experience, especially if you're tired and you're arriving to Nashville also late at night, because we were actually coming from Alabama doing some other business deals, and things got carried away and it got late and we couldn't make it till here early. So communication was horrible right from the get-go. Then they have a very intrusive background check, right? So normally we do background checks for long-term rentals because we're talking about a contract that is 1 year long, sometimes even 2 year long. And you want to make sure that you're not placing a criminal in your unit, right? So this item right here, the background check, I took it with a grain of salt because I figure, hey, if they're doing background check, that means it's pretty safe for us to stay there. And at least we don't have to deal with some random dude walking into our unit, right? So Anthony had to take a picture of his ID, take a picture of himself, you name it, the whole thing, just to get through that. And they said that once the background check was completed, that they were gonna send us additional instructions to check in. So everything was completed. We got the okay to go, the green light, and they said, here's your additional instructions. And your additional instruction is to download an app. Come on, an app. Another freaking app. I hate apps, okay? One thing is to download an app that you use on a regular basis. An Uber app, a Lyft, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You're using it all the time. But downloading an app just for the purpose of renting out an Airbnb that you might never use again down the line, that's just overkill. It was definitely an overkill. And so don't do that to your guests. If you're going to use an app, make sure it's one that is standard. Let's say Airbnb, for example, or booking.com, because there's a higher likelihood that you're going to use it again. But just a standalone app, just so you can, feel fancy and say, hey, I have my own app. That's a horrible thing to do for your guests. And so the app was also useless. It wasn't working. It said you're all good to go, but it did not include the room number. Imagine, it's horrible, right? But we thought, okay, maybe the room number will activate as we get closer to the check-in day. So that's fine. We didn't give it too much thought. We got here to the building, and guess what? The building was impossible to find. So talking about instructions, they sent us testaments, literally testaments of messages, long messages, all useless messages with to-dos, do's and don'ts, but none of those messages, they include how or where to find the building, and 2, your room number. So when we arrived to the neighborhood, Anthony had to spend an extra half hour because I couldn't keep driving around. So I stopped the car, he got off, and he started looking for the entrance. So it turns out that the entrance of the building was through a garage. But guess what? The garage had also multiple entrances. So imagine trying to figure it out at 11:30 at night, tired from driving 4-something hours from Alabama to Nashville, looking for the entrance of the building. It's just like, you cannot make this stuff up. So Anthony finally made it in. We finally made it in. And it turns out that the entrance to the building was on the 3rd floor. So you have to drive, go around. Imagine all of this with luggages, with a backpack, heavy. You're tired. You're exhausted from, traveling for weeks. And all you want to do is just to make sure you get in. So as soon as we get into the building, we had high expectations. Yes, we did. And the high expectation that we had was that we will finally get our room number unlocked. So that never happened. And there were a total of 57 apartments just in that one floor that we were staying. So what were we supposed to do? Go one by one? No, right? Because we didn't want to be the kind of person that will walk into someone else's room, like that happened with a single mom, right? So we decided to call the 1-800 number, whatever number they had on the application. And we had to wait 1 hour before somebody could even pick up the phone. 1 hour. And the first time that person picked up our phone within that hour of wait, the call got disconnected. So we're already talking 1 o'clock in the morning, frustrated trying to get into our apartment. Once again, you can make this stuff up. So then we try to call again. And then once again, we have bad customer service, completely untrained, right? Completely unaware of what's going on. So we were explaining that, hey, we don't have a room number. And this person, all he kept saying over the phone was, no, the room number should be in the application. We're like, no, we're looking at the application right now. There's no room number. Oh, but check your email. We're like, we checked their email 1,000 times during that hour that we were waiting for you to pick up the phone. It's not working. And no. So they make Anthony go up and down the stairs, multiple floors, 3 floors in total, while I was guarding the luggage. Not that I could do anything about it. Like, what am I supposed to do? But hey, I just sat there and I just waited. We were tired. And 3 hours later, they still couldn't figure it out. Okay? And again, I know this might sound like a venting session, but please just hear this, take it with a grain of salt, and don't replicate that in your business model. It is horrible. If you're gonna put customer service, make sure that they are trained, okay? If you're gonna provide instructions to get in, make sure that your emails or your text messages are short and sweet, straight to the point. This is how you get into the building. This is how you're gonna find it. Whatever it takes, but be clear. Don't send out lengthy messages with do's and don'ts and house rules. You can leave those in the apartment. You can do a nice binder, a nice printout, and your guests will make sure they read that. But don't do that over text message. We don't care about the house rules at that point. We just want to go in and make sure that we get a good night's sleep. So none of that happened. While Anthony was still on the phone, we ended up calling the Hyatt to see if we can at least get a last minute room, which fortunately we did. But you know what happens to last minute reservations? It's expensive. So we were already out also close to $2,000 and this horrible short-term rental in Nashville, but we also had to come out with an additional $2,000 just so we can reserve the room here in Nashville because we were desperate to get to sleep. So 3 hours later, nothing happened. We were never able to find the unit. It was horrible. And we ended up leaving and we finally made it into this room. And we finally went to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we finally made it to sleep at 4 o'clock in the morning. But before we did that, we made sure we left a trail of messages on the booking.com platform telling them what was happening because, you know, sometimes the hosts, they can be mean and they can just make stuff up. So we wanted to make sure that everything was happening in the right timeline. So the next day, we finally got in touch with the host because apparently the customer service that was helping us at 2 o'clock in the morning did not have the power to give us a refund. They basically didn't have the power to do anything. I don't even know why they were hired, to be honest. So they couldn't do anything. So we had to deal with them the next day. And what they sadly said was, we were going to issue a refund only for the night that you couldn't come in. We will hold your money hostage for the remaining of the night. Once again, sounds similar to the New Orleans incident. Please don't do that. It's horrible. We're here in business. It's not like we have a lot of money falling down the sky for free, and you shouldn't be holding your guests' money hostage either, okay? So horrible experience. They said that out of the $2,000 that we paid them on the reservation, they were only going to give us back 200 and something. Ridiculous. Luckily, booking.com, unlike Airbnb, they take ownership. They are much larger than Airbnb and they take pride on their customer service. So we ended up getting a customer service contacting us, asking us about what happened. And so we explained everything, and booking.com forced the host to give us our money back. And in addition to that, they offered to match the difference that we ended up paying for this hotel because it was an inconvenience that was caused. We could have just rented this hotel in the first place and saved a lot of money, but we didn't do that. We were forced to rent out at the very last minute because we were desperate to find a place to sleep. And so booking.com made sure that we got our money back and that we also got a price match, which was nice. We didn't need that, but hey, again, at least we were getting some kind of compensation for the stress that what was caused. Again, completely unnecessary, but we truly appreciate that. So I know this was a lengthy episode, but let me make sure you get this right. When you're doing rentals, you are in the hospitality business. When you're doing Airbnb, short-term rental, whatever you want to call it, you're in the hospitality business, which means you have to make sure that your guests feel comfortable. If you're going to do a model and where you're going to not be present, make sure that your power team is equipped to handle the demands of your customers. So for example, no boots on ground, no property manager on site. Once again, customer service was horrible. You don't leave customer service representatives that are incapable of fixing the problem. For example, we asked for a refund, they didn't want to do it because apparently they didn't have the power to do that. So make sure that either you place somebody next to that person or make that person really available to handle the refunds, or at least make sure that your customer service rep has the necessary tools to make the life of your guests enjoyable, because it's not even about making it easy. It's enjoyable. They're paying money to stay. And this was a horrible experience. Now, I want to get your thoughts. You as a guest, did you have to get through some of this? And if so, make sure you share that in the comment section below so that whoever's watching this episode and is thinking about doing an Airbnb, they can learn through your experiences, through my experiences, so that they can create a much better product. And if you are an Airbnb business host, feel free to share what's working for you. Leave it down in the comment section below so that whoever is looking to enter the Airbnb business learns something good from you aside from this video, because this is what we're all trying to create here. So let me know what you think. And check out this video right here that's going to help you complement everything you just learned today. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.